pleasure for me to introduce a little bit you to the work we are doing in Barcelona in our research group and also in our small research association. It's a general topic, so it's both applicable to the EU and the US. If we want to achieve best practices in energy analysis, there is something that would be useful maybe in the future is to do some reality checks. And to do some reality checks, you need some tools, analytical tools, and it's what we are working on in Barcelona. So let's see a little bit how they are useful and why actually. So first thing, just a quote from Einstein. It's quite a famous one. The world we've got created is the result of our thinking. If you want to change the world, you change your thinking. So the first problem with it is what is wrong with our thinking so far. What we don't understand really is the importance of fossil energy in making possible our civilization. If you look at the increase of population, it has been as a result of the introduction of fossil energy at some point during the 19th century. And this is, we are getting used to it to the extent that we consider a normal trend of economic growth, and we get used to, and it becomes a narrative for everything we are talking, while it is still an exception in history. So, if we want to understand the things, I suggest that we take the red pill, which is a politically incorrect thing, but actually it can be useful, or we take the blue pill, which is not so fun. So let's take the red pill. First thing first, guys, global energy consumption keeps growing. This is it. This is a fact. We are not decoupling our dependence on fossil energy so far. And new energy sources do not change the picture. They are growing, obviously, but they do not replace existing energy sources, and especially the fossil energy sources. Also, something that is wrong is the way we think that our energy intensity, the energy pressure of our economy, we think that it's decreasing because we evaluate it looking just at the global energy we consume divided by the overall GDP of one country. And the example is of the US, we think that it is actually decreasing while we've got economic growth, which is actually meaningless because you compare two things without a reference. You compare a global and overall energy consumption that can be high and a high GDP also. For instance, let's take the example of Sweden. You've got a certain ratio then. And it is the same ratio as El Salvador, which is not the same country because they've got a small energy consumption and a small economic growth. So it's something that we could less be relying on intensive variables that don't contain all the information and maybe to split a little bit. And if you do just the energy consumption per capita, sometimes it's useful because then you see that in fact you are plateauing since the 70s per capita in terms of energy consumption. So the meaning of that is that we are not dematerializing our economy so far. Another thing that we need to understand is that fossil energy is at an ideal place in terms of all the materials needed to transform, extract, transform, and transmit that energy. And if we want to change it for nuclear energy or from solar energy, we will have to invest more materials. So more materials, more labor, and more energy. This is something also we need to understand when we discuss about fossil energy being conventional or unconventional or other alternative energy sources, depending on a stock, a resource, you've got a decreasing return on energy over time, so over the stock itself. So the more you've got consumed of that stock, the better quality you've got taken first, obviously, and then you remain with some lower quality, which means that you don't sustain the same net energy supply to the society. Also, something really important is that when you speak about peak oil, it's not just a mere stock depletion. It's something different. So if you take the metaphor of pig grain, this is just a stock, and you take whatever you want, you put all the people you need in order to sustain a flow that you need in the demand side. So you are free to do it as you can. But with alternative energy sources, and when you reach a peak oil in terms of oil, especially, you've got a sort of reservoir that is not accessible easily with this metaphor. Why? Because you need to rely on this capacity of the bucket, and the bucket is something that is an internal constraint. And sometimes you don't, and actually you've got a limited amount of energy that you can take from this reservoir. You cannot just grow and say, I will supply whatever I need. It's okay, I won't have a problem. No, you've got an internal constraint here, which is limiting your energy budget. This is it. So, what's the problem actually? Summarizing this is that sustainability discussions are never about us. They are always to fix the world, to have technology, etc. And by doing so, we are looking for easy solutions. If we are running out of fossil energy, let's make agro-biofuel. If the panda is disappearing, let's clone the panda. So we need to understand that a little bit. And actually, it can be done if we start to engage a true discussion about our sustainability and actually use tools for it. So let's do something completely different. This is a short introduction of what we are doing. I was referring to this yesterday. When you look at the metabolism body, okay, we know that, globally speaking, you've got a certain consumption of energy, internal consumption of energy. You can divide it by the body mass, and you get what we call the metabolic rate. So this is something that to characterize a human being or other species, which depends on the characteristics of each organs, actually. And so you've got some benchmarks at a lower level. The parts can explain the whole, how it works. And information on the whole may not be, won't be sufficient, actually. Because if you compare, for instance, Dominic M with ET or ELK, you will see that they may have the same metabolic rate, globally speaking, but actually, Dominic M has a big brain. He is at Ecologic Institute, so no problem about it. But maybe Hulk has big muscles, no? And a big heart. He's quite sensitive, while ET has a big liver. So globally speaking, you've got the same behavior. But they are not the same. They have different identity, and we know it. So you need to look at the different parts to explain the whole. This is the same thing with society. You can explain the functioning of the society as a whole by looking at the parts, the different compartments, the different sectors, especially the energy sector. So again, if we take this metaphor of the heart transplant surgery, you've got a heart powered by fossil fuel, which is the energy sector, for instance. And it has some technical performance, and you want to switch it, to replace it by an artificial heart. So another energy sector. This candidate for an alternative energy sector will have to comply with certain benchmarks in order to keep the whole society working. If it is not possible, then we need to start a discussion, a negotiation at the society level in order to what we want to sustain, what is possible to be sustained, at which cost, etc. And so far, there is no good candidate to replace the fossil energy. And this is the key point, because this is why we need to discuss also our sustainability. So if you want to know more about those innovative tools, you are welcome to Barcelona, because we are organizing a summer school in September. So it will be focusing on our methods. Obviously, we are more discussing about society than human bodies, but it's still interesting. So it's in September, and actually the weekend after, it's the main festival of Barcelona, so you should have a great time. If you are interested, you can also check out our books of our group. I will let it on screen, and that's it.
Great. Any questions?
I forgot the glasses for Dominic.
Yeah, I mean, it's a compelling point that you make that that the transition isn't as simple as a lot of us make it out to be, because most of us here believe strongly in renewables. Do you see a gradual transition eventually happening, or do you see kind of the cost of fossil fuel going up and then balancing out, and at some point we hit a point where we still have fossil fuels as a part of the economy, but it's plateaued as opposed to going up with energy use?
Yeah. I think there is the so-called peak oil curve, the bell curve. We may discuss while maybe we'll have a plateau, so sustaining our dependence on that. But I think what we'll see, it was my argument in the recent days, that we will still use those fossil energy sources because we are so dependent on it that we need them to sustain. But this would be an error not to invest in other solutions at the same time. So we should use those remaining reserve, good quality ones, because to invest in the future in a transition. It takes time, but we need to anticipate it to avoid a sort of crash at the time that we won't be able, economically speaking, or even physically speaking, to take these fossil energy sources, those reserves, while not having invested before in a transition. And this is quite important because actually we won't use all the fossil energy reserves, because at some point, exactly, some gas, some oil will remain in the ground because they won't be economically viable. But this can be done only if we modify the way we deal with energy. Relying more on electricity is not that simple. It implies that you change quite a bit the structure of your society, because transportations can be done to a certain extent, but you've got then problems of storing the energy, etc. You've got a lot of problems. So when we think, this is large-scale discussion, obviously. Locally speaking, we can do some things. But we need also to look for overall discussion on this, where we are going. And I think we reach always some problems that we need to address in order to be viable scenarios.
Other questions?
So if you want to come, just live4.org. And I'm sure we can negotiate with ELEEP to get some funds.
All right, thanks very much, Francois.
Thank you.